Nacho, Nacho Man, yeah. I got to be a Nacho Man, got to be a Nacho Man. I got to be a Nacho Man.
Welcome, Vault Dwellers. My name is Nacho Bidness, and today I am going to show you a trick that is going to allow you to very quickly clean out all of the caps from robot vendors on a daily basis. You're also going to gain a ton of experience points doing this, and it is so powerful that I debated whether or not to even release this video. After all, it takes some of the fun and the challenge out of the game with this particular exploit. And yet, if I didn't release this video, eventually someone else would notice what I have noticed and release their own. And ultimately, I do expect that sooner or later Bethesda will patch this out. Although I will say that I'm very surprised that this has not been talked about or patched so far, nearly a year into the game. So what are we doing? Well, what we're going to do is we are going to make and scrap a whole bunch of Assaultron helmets. There's a few ingredients that we're going to need for this particular exploit, and the first is the plans to create the Assaultron helmet at the armor workbench. Now, I already have these plans unlocked for this particular character, but if you scrap an Assaultron head, there is a chance that you will receive the plans. Now, I don't mean the junk Assaultron head that can sometimes appear in your weapons tab. I mean the actual junk item scrap Assaultron head. You can get this particular item from destroyed Assaultrons, or if you happen to pick up one of the Assaultron head weapons and scrap that weapon, you can get this junk item. And once you have gotten lucky by scrapping one of these and get the plans unlocked to create Assaultron heads, you're well on your way. Now, Assaultrons can be a challenging enemy, and so one place that you can come and sometimes get lucky and get a drop on these scrap Assaultron head junk items is over here in the employees only area in the White Springs. There's a dead Assaultron here that's in this server. I guess I've already cleaned it out. Sometimes there'll be a scrap Assaultron's head in there. Other places that you can look are the silo bunkers where you launch nukes, or at Watoga. Once you have the plans and you have an Assaultron head, the next thing that you're going to need is you are going to need the Super Duper perk. Super Duper, if you're not familiar, is a great perk to have whenever you're doing any crafting, because at rank 3 you have a 30% chance to get double the results. In this case, you have a 30% chance to get 2 Assaultron heads. You really do want to get this at rank 3, otherwise the loop is inefficient enough that you're going to struggle to make a profit. The last thing that you're going to need is a whole bunch of steel. Now, steel is essentially almost free in the game. There are so many places where you can gather just piles and piles of steel. One of the easiest places to go and do that would be, for example, the Morgantown Airport. Just kill all the Scorched that are there, that are all low level, and take all their guns and scrap them, and you'll get a bunch of steel. I like to start off this loop having somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 steel. That's usually enough that I can get enough caps to completely clear out the vendors. Now, if you're in a hurry and you'd rather not go kill enemies to get all the guns that you need to scrap, to get the steel that you need, one other thing that you could do is come to the White Springs, where almost all of these robot vendors have quite a bit of bulk steel available for sale in the junk menu. Each time you buy it, you get 30 steel that you can use for this. And you can turn a profit just by, all right, somebody bought some stuff from me. You can turn a profit from buying bulk steel and doing this trick, but it is going to cut into the overall amount of caps that you make if you buy bulk steel versus just finding it out in the world. So now that we've got some Assaultron plans, a bunch of steel, and an Assaultron head, what we can do is come over to an armor workbench and create an Assaultron helmet. If we're lucky, Super Duper will pop and we will see we've already got 2 Assaultron helmets. Now what you notice is that when you scrap that, you get an Assaultron head and 1 steel scrap. Now if we go back to the crafting menu, what we notice is that it takes only 2 steel and an Assaultron head to make an Assaultron helmet. And see, we've already gone and doubled again. We're getting really lucky on this particular run. So it means that each time we go do this, we only spend 1 steel. And that means that we can just go and create and scrap these Assaultron helmets over and over again to get more and more of those scrap Assaultron heads. So I'm going to go ahead and use up all of my steel and make a little cut here, and then we'll jump to the next part of what we're up to. So as I slowly use up the last of my steel, there's a few further points that I wanted to make. The first is that I actually ended up buying some bulk steel and had about 520 steel total for this particular run, which is why I'm going to have so many more helmets than you may get if you do this with starting off around 400. The second point that I wanted to make was that the perk Packrat is extremely useful to have when you're doing this. The reason is that each of these Assaultron helmets weighs 0.1 pounds, and that's regardless of whether or not you have Packrat. However, the scrap Assaultron head item weighs 6 pounds if you do not have Packrat. With Packrat, that's reduced to 2 pounds. So if you're not using Packrat, you may bump up against the maximum that your character is allowed to carry. I don't know exactly what it is, but I do know that there is an absolute maximum that you're allowed to carry. I also wanted to mention that I seem to be gaining a lot of experience from doing this, especially now that I have put on my unyielding armor and gotten my health very low. I am making 19 experience points per helmet, which is quite a bit. I have at this point crafted probably 1,000 plus of these helmets, and so if you are wanting to kind of take things to the max, use your unyielding armor to get the most experience points that you can. Also, it will help you get the most caps that you can for when you sell this stuff. Last thing that I wanted to mention here was that I like to keep around 10 helmets just as a seed for the next time I do the run. Just helps smooth things on a little bit faster. But I like to store them in my stash box as helmets rather than heads, because 10 helmets in my stash box weighs 1 pound, while the heads, if I put 10 of them in, since Packrat does not affect items in your stash box, that would actually be 60 pounds of helmets in your stash box. You can test that for yourself by doing what I'm going to do. Actually, I'll just do this right now to demonstrate. Let me make sure I've got my 10. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, I'm going to put exactly one of these junk helmets in my stash box. Even though it says 2 on my screen for weight, you can see that my stash box, that's interesting, it actually went up by 8. Maybe I've done my math wrong. Either way, there's certainly a lot less weight in your stash box if you store kind of your seed for your next run as helmets, as opposed to storing them as the junk items. So we've got some helmets stored, and we are out of steel. Wait, did I have? Yes, I still had some helmets that I can scrap. You notice that I don't necessarily worry about trying to have enough steel for all the helmets in my inventory, and that's because Super Duper will pop 1 in 3 times, regardless of whether you're doing something 1 time or 20 times. It's just that to keep from having to switch back and forth between the menus quite so much, it's a little bit easier and faster if you in fact have several helmets to begin with. So there we go. That is probably quite enough. I'm actually going to keep 1 helmet, and we're going to take a look at how we want to go about selling these things. Let's clear out my inventory of any junk that I may have, just so that we can have kind of a clean interface with the robot vendor. And let's turn on my hard bargain perk. Great, that's already on. As I have demonstrated in previous videos, a charisma of 17 or better plus hard bargain will net you the best possible prices in the game. So there's several ways that we can go about selling these helmets. Let's take a look at each of what we of them and determine what's the best way to sell these. Because as you can see, when I scrap any any head, I get 3 circuitry, 1 screw, and 1 silver. So we can compare the price that we get for the heads and the junk and the helmets. And what we'll find is that the helmet is 5 caps. We can't sell the helmet for any more than 5 caps. Meanwhile, selling one of the scrap Assaultron heads is 7 caps. And finally, selling all of the junk out of an Assaultron head gets us 6 caps for the circuits, 2 for the screws, and 2 for the silver. So we end up getting the most bang for our buck by actually scrapping all of the Assaultron heads that we've made, except for the seed that we left in our stash box. So I'm going to go ahead and scrap these now, and I'm going to end up with 789 circuitry, 263 screws, and 263 silver. So I can come over here and go ahead and just start selling stuff to this guy. With the circuits alone, I've actually exceeded the 1,400 cap per day limit on vendors. As you can see, by gaining so much experience and making it so that it's so easy to sell out the vendors here, we have more or less gotten to the point where money and levels don't matter so much anymore. So we'll just clean that guy out, and we're still left with a lot of screws and silver that we can then sell to our fellow players in our junk vending machines. So there you go. That is how to use the Assaultron helmet plans, a scrap Assaultron head, and a bunch of steel to turn all of those components and ingredients into a great big pile of experience points, a great big pile of caps, and a lot of leftover junk that we can sell to fellow players. As I said, this is a powerful trick, and I would caution anybody against using it too much when they're a low level. Reason being that if you gain too many levels too fast, you won't have the equipment that you need to deal with the higher level enemies that are going to start spawning in for you when you yourself are at a higher level. That being said, once you've got high level equipment, getting additional levels and getting additional caps to buy whatever you'd like to get from your fellow players, such as two-shot explosives or whatever, is now fairly trivial. I hope that you found this information useful. And I also hope that if you have similar tricks that you'd like to explore, that you'll leave me a comment below, because I would love to hear about any tricks that you guys may have discovered. If you like the content, be sure to subscribe to get more. And if you disliked, please tell me why in a comment so that I can try and do better for you next time. Until next time, my name is Nacho Bidness, and I'm saying it's a great big wasteland out there. Let's go have fun in it.